as I begin to watch Michael's clips posts out of order over on Bellular Clips, where him and Matt talk about his journey into Final Fantasy from World of Warcraft, we are now going to watch a video on Asmongold's journey into 14, which officially, I believe, starts July 3rd. He actually did a charity stream and said that he would announce the date he's going into 14 if $300,000 was raised. There were some other prizes along the way, and they raised, I want to say, like $363,000. Watching him delete his boosted character from TBC was quite the journey. Got to watch that live. I believe that clip is posted over on Asmongold TV. So while I am talking about Bellular today, I do want to say thank you to Asmongold for making a charity event out of the spectacle that is watching you get into 14. I think that's pretty cool, Zach. And I think that that's a pretty cool way to take advantage of a situation where there are a lot of people interested in one person trying a game, even though that person liking or not liking the game on its own really shouldn't have a long-term impact on the game. It is an entry point for hundreds of thousands of people to consider the game or consider the game again. And so I think it's important for both communities to have eyes on somebody. And unfortunately for Zach, it is Zach, because I know that he hasn't liked that. So I think it's pretty cool that he made a charitable contribution out of that. That was really neat.
Okay, Final Fantasy topics.
Yep.
Let's talk about things. So, Asmongold said, I will try Final Fantasy XIV on Twitter.com. And I almost immediately replied
Please.
to him with basically, please don't stream it. Oh, he does a follow-up tweet. He says, as a follow-up, this isn't a big deal to me, but I know it is for a lot of other people. Please just let me enjoy and play the game without turning into a drama or anything else unpleasant. It's just a game. 100% that. 100% that. And I would say there, like, my personal recommendation would be, Zach, play it as Zach. Don't play it as Asmongold. Don't do it on stream. At least do it in your second stream channel.
Definitely.
But point there is, and like I say this having streamed,
it's probably better for 14 that he does it on his main channel, because it will get a view count probably as large or larger than the World First race would. It doesn't need to represent the game perfectly accurately. It just needs to represent the game enough that it gets people interested in trying the game. It has a massive free trial and a community that is very good at welcoming sprouts into the game. So I think that... and the new player experience is what it is. So they're either going to like it or they're not. We're not making a new one. So here we are. And so I think it's a great excuse to invite people into the game for Zach's enjoyment of the game and for his more well-rounded views when he posts on things like Allcraft or when he goes on other podcasts like he did with Dr. K, somebody I didn't know of except I watched his interview with them. His more well-rounded view of the game, it would be best if not shaped by 50,000 people creating free trial characters to spam him by standing all around him on quest givers. He has a huge number of people in his fan base that do play 14, so they are going to know where to be. For the fact that people think they're all just WoW people that hate 14, there's a huge portion of his base that plays. And so I think for his enjoyment of the game, while we are very good as a community at inviting sprouts into it, he's not a typical sprout, and I think to protect his new player experience for him, I agree that it should be offline.
Before. You cannot get immersed while you're looking at chat.
Difficult.
You just can't. And if you have in-game audio muted and music on, it just, all those things ruin the experience.
Might as well not play the game.
Yeah.
It's like watching a movie muted. Like
with FF, it's like, I think streaming the end game MMO bit after the MSQ is obviously like
awesome.
People do get immersed. It is immersive, even with chat. This community is very good about being spoiler sensitive, even if, unless the streamer explicitly asks. So Sprout streams. Sprouts are what we call our new players because of the Sprout emblem that appears next to their name. And Sprout streams are incredibly popular. People saying first-time playthrough regularly allow those people to get massive view totals. Unfortunately for those people, some of them then assume that they are ready to make like a full-time leap into content creation, and depending on the person, they may or may not be able to maintain those numbers once they actually catch up. So we have an odd level of fascination with seeing people's first-time reactions to narrative experiences or seeing gameplay experiences for the first time. And so I think that it's not true that you can't share that experience. as a streamer. But this is not Streaming 14. That's a different video he posted. This is Asmongold specifically. Asmongold specifically tried to delete his character on stream recently and could not because players were healing him to keep him from dying, were mailing him things in game which stop you from deleting a character. The deleted character was around an incentive based on that charity stream at $250,000. He was going to delete his boosted character to Burning Crusade. And so, like, it's too many people, and it only takes a couple interacting with him for it to change that on-game experience. And so when there's 60,000 people, even if 59,900 of them want to be respectful and just see his take, that other 100 are going to drive the narrative.
Yeah, totally regular.
Yep,
But yeah, I just say it's that sort of thing, like streaming Final Fantasy 14, like doing the MSQ and stuff. That is going to, I mean, spoilers and stuff for your audience, it's going to hurt their experience, but more importantly, for the individual doing the streaming, it's like the worst way to experience that game. And then also, I think it would make for a bad game because, being real, Realm Reborn is fucking tedious sometimes.
Very tedious
It
times.
is very tedious sometimes, and I can talk about that.
Tedious is a very generous word when you look at the world through Asmongold's view. What Zach has said, his view of story in games is very different than Michael Bellular on the left or Matt, a Final Fantasy and Nier fan on the right, that works on his team. That what he has said, and this is just his definition, I think that World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy have an almost identical feature list in a different order. I've said it 1,000 times. What he has said his view of story is it is the sprinkles on a cupcake. It's not the icing, it's not the cake. And so when you go to buy a cupcake, you go to buy it for the cake, possibly included with the icing. The sprinkles are optional. If the sprinkles are not available, you're still going to buy that cupcake. You're still going to enjoy that cupcake. If they say the sprinkles are the only thing available, you're not going to buy that cupcake. And so for him, gameplay, core gameplay loop is the cake. And icing, loosely in his definition, is the gear progression. He calls it character progression, but for a narrative player that means something different. Gear progression tied to that. It's that grinding of loot. It's that upgrading. For him, sometimes it is cosmetics. He does mount-offs and transmog competitions. So in that way, cosmetics, he would very much align with a huge portion of the 14 community. And so he aligns a lot more closely with the way that maybe like an Arthur's or a Xenosys consumes the game than somebody more narrative-based like FS, who does have a huge respect and enjoyment for raid content. And so when you look at Michael and Matt, who align with a huge portion of the community, with the fact that narrative first, and Matt has talked about the number of raids he's missed, but his love, his deep, deep love for the game is based around this story that is told to him regardless. Saying that A Realm Reborn is tedious when the battle content, the meaningful battle content is few and far between, compared to the amount of narrative that they are establishing, that we build on, is a really big understatement.
I have a little bit of a pacing gripe with the game thus far. Overall positive, but a few gripes. So yeah, look, don't ruin it, as it says in our document. Don't ruin it for the man. You know, let's treat it as just a human playing Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
It's sort of funny how us and FF has like exploded in the internet. Oh, cheers! So
That's
much
not what I
these
was
days. Yes, well, it has this side effect
Yeah,
too.
so you're saying FF's exploding?
Yeah, it's like
I appreciate how casual these are. For those of you that can't see because of my face, oftentimes they're, checking phones, checking emails, whatever they're doing in the background, makes these really raw. It's why when I first watched these, I really struggled because I have known this team for their scripted, very, very, very established content. But as I watch more of this, this really does feel like we're tuning into two friends, and a lot of times the context I feel I'm adding is for the fact that these are public conversations, because left to their own, they are doing a good job of satisfying what they each think, but they both consume games in a very similar way compared to some of the more some of the other ways that you can consume MMOs. These are large theme park games.
I think it exploded just because it's like, oh, wow, people playing FF, that is newsworthy, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's like purely just, yeah, I'm playing it, a few hours when I can. That's it. That's literally it. It's just different from the streaming thing. And, I could talk about all the reasons why I think streaming it would be bad, but I already did that last week.
Yeah.
I already talked about why I won't personally stream it, and obviously those are the same reasons I'd say to anyone else. Interesting the guys checking it out, I guess. There you go. I
Yeah.
don't really know. Like, Asmongold, I'm fairly sure he said he doesn't really enjoy narrative games or like the story stuff that much.
I'm looking forward to, out of the context of this, when I'm watching this, I'm watching this the day that we found out that Zeppla is going on Allcraft, a podcast with Asmongold. And so that would be kind of like Asmongold coming over and going to like State of the Realm with Mr. Happy. And I think Zeppla is a great representative of the community to go into that space. Because I think there is a lot of game here. The question about him getting into the game is how far into the game is he going to get? Because my understanding with ESO, I didn't watch his coverage of ESO, was that he only got a couple days in before he kind of made up his mind. And unfortunately, for MMOs, it is very rare that the first couple days really represents a complete experience of the game. Usually you can't skip over those right to the end, but much like watching the last 5 minutes of a movie, you can't skip over the beginning of a movie. You've got to stay for that full 2 hours, but that 2 becomes much, much larger. And so it's very, very hard. I know that Brian and I recorded my thoughts on PSO2 New Genesis for Work to Game, and the reason I didn't want to record them here on Gaming Kinda is because right now they're really negative, and I want somebody positive in the room, and I know I'm not far enough in the experience for negative to be the only way that I'm going to feel for sure. And so I think my concern with this is that our early game in Final Fantasy XIV is such a poor representation of everything that the devs and the community have become in Shadowbringers. Not that ARR is terrible content. I played it during ARR and really enjoyed it. But ARR now is not ARR then, and it is not a representation of all the changes and improvements that we've made over the years. Shadowbringers, I think, is better because it came from ARR. We couldn't have gotten there without it. But you don't get to experience why Shadowbringers is good if you stop halfway through ARR. If you don't make it to 30 and get your Jobstone, if you don't make it to 50 and unlock the end of your class, if you don't make it through the post-50 quest line to get into Heavensward and have finished A Realm Reborn, if you don't get to experience the side content as you go into the various raids, if you don't get to do these things, then there's huge portions, non-story based, of the way the community interacts through things like fates, through things like crafting and gathering, what a beast tribe is, that actually pay a significant tribute to the things that many WoW players say they miss about WoW. And my concern is that he's not going to get far enough in, and he's going to say, much like Lazy Peon did when he skipped story and then said I think he's going to miss the mark, because he's going to say, well, what I didn't like is that it did too much of this and not enough of that. And that his criticism may or may not be accurate. If his criticism is, what I don't like is that it didn't have enough PvP and it had too much story, that's actually a fairly accurate criticism for the way he plays games, even though he has said MMORPGs are not his primary source of PvP. He prefers more PvP-centric games that were based around it, but that instead he's going to say something like, well, I really don't like that there's not enough group content and that it's story-based, where one of those is just not true, and he didn't make it far enough in for that to be corrected. If he doesn't like the game and he has an accurate picture of what the game is, that's fine. We do not want, and he himself has said, we do not want all games to be for all people, because then they end up being for no one. We want the game to be good at serving who it aims to serve. And if that is not him, that is okay. But I just want him to know what the game is before he makes his mind up on that.
I think he said that. I think he may have said that under pressure to kind of, not to decry the game, but to defend himself from being forced into playing it, maybe. Because I saw a lot of people point out that, like, he'll say that and then there'll be some oh yeah, actually this is a pretty good example actually. He said that about whenever he's talking about FF before, and I think was in response to one of our clips, was it? I think so.
Could be.
Yeah, but he's talking about like how he doesn't really enjoy story-driven games and all that. And then when he was watching the video that went up, was yesterday? Was it yesterday?
Couldn't tell you.
Fuck, time is unreasonable. It was yesterday. Yeah,
that video.
Yeah, he was watching the Note King Rules Forever video.
Don't worry about it, Matt. We all watch this stuff at whatever time it pops into our YouTube feed, so it's never yesterday for anybody.
And then it was What's Wrong with WoW with the title card. John put like a bit of Sylvanas holding the Helm of Domination over Bolvar after taking it off, and Asmon paused and just hit that pause, and then went off on how Sylvanas being such a character is kind of ruining the game. And I was just like,
okay, clearly cares about story and setting.
The World of Warcraft characters at least have there. I mean, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say he was lying or
that's an example of where he does care about story. He does want the sprinkles on the cupcake. It's why I get frustrated when sometimes the WoW bad, Final Fantasy XIV good mentality starts to say, which game has better story? Final Fantasy has story. WoW doesn't have story. And so that's why I get so defensive of WoW, because the sprinkles do enhance the cupcake even for Zach. They do. It's just that for him, it's not the primary ingredient. It's something that enhances the experience, not drives the experience.
Anything like that, because he knows himself better than anybody knows him, for sure. But it was just like, oh, okay. You could be sold on it. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
He could 100% be sold on it.
Yeah, I just think it's that thing. Like, I'd say for anyone, like, if you just happen to be a streamer and you're interested in picking up this game, I would just say to you, try to grab it in your free personal time outside of outside of that stuff, because I think that's the only way to properly sort of take the game as it comes. Yeah. I guess sort of how they sort of intend it to be structured.
Yeah. So even I have that thing where I played Heavensward a little bit faster than I would have liked.
Intended is an odd word choice. I know these are clips, and so these are just raw takes, and this is my raw take. But intended is a weird choice, because nothing about ARR is intended. At this point, we've pruned abilities that existed back then. We've added classes that didn't. We've sped up the way you experience the game, so you no longer gap out and are encouraged to explore your hunting log and fates and side quests. You're really, as a new player, meant to just focus on MSQ and do your class quests, maybe do your blue plus quests, or you can come back and do those. They unlock everything else. And so nothing about ARR is as intended. The new player experience and the amount of quests after and the way the quests were designed were not thought out with what's this going to be like years and years from now. They were trying to turn 1.0 around and keep the ship alive. There was nothing that far out. Such devastation was not my intention, really does sum up the bad parts of ARR. This spaghetti code. That's a quote from the game that gets quoted all the time. And I think that's something that it really does. Intention's not fair. That's like saying that the new player experience prior to the Shadowlands chain is the intended way to enjoy WoW. That's why they went back and redid it. It's like saying the Burning Crusade Classic is #no changes and it's working as intended when people are clearing Kara day 1 with a partial raid group, or day 7 or whatever day they got to cap. And so it just... Intended is an odd word, and even within 14, the writer for Endwalker said that she was hesitant to release what she feels the theme of the next expansion was narratively, because she does not want that to pigeonhole somebody to enjoying the game only one way. The intended theme, intended being the word, is fun. Have fun. And so I think him having the intended experience, if it's fun for him to share it with his community, if it's fun to do it out in front of that as his more exaggerated self on his community, where that loud and vocal fraction of them gets to meme on it, if not being able to delete his character because if that really is what he thinks makes good content, and he likes making good content, he gets joy out of that, does it for a living, then that is his intended way. So I think intended starts to imply that there's a best way, that there's a primary path. And while there is a path in MMOs that has the most footprints, it's the most well-trodden path. And so it's broad, and you can see that other people have walked that way before. The brush has been cleared. If you want to venture off through the trees, then that's fine. And so if his method, if he wants to do this live, I do think there are some valid concerns here, but as long as he's aware of those concerns and he says, here's the pros and cons if I do it live, here's the pros and cons if I do it on my alternate channel, here's the pros and cons if I do it totally offline, as long as he's aware of all those, and I think he is, maybe hindsight would make him feel that he's picked a little differently, but ultimately it's his call. And so while I agree that he should consider doing this in a less visible way, that's not to say he can't consider doing this on... There's advantages to doing it on the Asmongold channel. There are advantages to that. And I think intended is a word that I would... with the advantage of hindsight here, it's not me recording hours of clips here. I would maybe feel a little differently about.
Oh.
And I don't remember it all that super well. So I'll probably hit up New Game Plus to go through Heavensward again. Like, I know what happens, but I want to kind of experience it again with a kind of fresh eyes.
And the fresh eyes is an interesting word to end on with that clip, because that's why we love new players. That's why we're so careful to try to protect new players, to the point where we try to protect them from themselves. Hey, you know, I have seen in streams where we are talking about something and somebody says, I'm a new player and I'm really enjoying this conversation. And people have said, you shouldn't be in here. It's going to ruin your experience. We are protective to fresh eyes to a degree that we should not be as a community. That is their call to make. So making the information available, making it, hey, just letting everybody know this is going to be a spoiler thing if you'd like to protect your experience. Being open and transparent about that, I think, is fair. Not putting it in titles and thumbnails is a good effort to make by content creators so that it does not push its way into somebody's life who may want to avoid it. But saying you can't be here because I think that you should have the experience that I wish that I would have had or that I did have puts our impressions on somebody else's. And if you have spent time getting to know Asmongold and hanging out in Zach streams and listening to his views where he talks about things like hot tub streamers and politics and religion, and he talks about a lot of deep stuff, you get a feeling for the portions of him that he chooses to share. And that gives you a glimpse into what he gets from games. And what he gets from games, especially in the context of playing them on Asmongold as a channel, is different than maybe what I aim to get from games, both when I'm content creating and not. I play Final Fantasy on stream different than when I play it offline. And offline last night I was playing Surviving Mars and Rocket League. I don't do anything for those games on stream. They are there as something I enjoy off stream. And so I think intended starts to be, and fresh eyes starts to be words that show that we care. But we need to be very careful that that care doesn't go into the point of saying Asmongold's doing it wrong. If we have any stake, if he asks a question and we can help answer that question, if he wants to know, should I go left or right? Should I stream it? Should I not? Then sharing the information is fine. But it is ultimately his actions, and I am thrilled to see what he chooses to do July 3rd as he jumps into this game, kinda.